So it seems like at this point that every PokeTuber has had their crack at what the Pokemon Legends ZA starters are going to be. If you somehow missed it, Pokemon Legends ZA is the upcoming Pokemon Legends game releasing in 2025, centered on Kalos and specifically Lumio City. But I'm not a PokeTuber, I'm a Digituber, or I guess Monster Tuber is kind of what I'm trying to pivot into. I'm still going to focus mainly on Digimon though. So in today's video, I'm going to find what I believe are going to be Pokemon Legends ZA starter Pokemon, and because I always like to be a little bit extra, we're also going to create custom Mega Evolutions for the three we pick. What is up, digital companions? My name is Karn EX and welcome back to another video. And yes, today we are picking our starters for Pokemon Legends ZA. Right off the bat, I do want to say that I firmly believe that Legends ZA is set in the past. I see a lot of people talking about this blue neon look at Lumio City as if that's what the setting of Legends ZA is going to be, but I don't believe that's the case. This initial blueprint, the one we see on traditional sepia tone papyrus looking paper, is what I believe is the setting of Legends ZA. It is in the past of Kalos. This wireframe model we see is a prediction of what Lumio City is going to become, and indeed, it is what Lumio City is in X and Y. So we are looking at a more historical setting for Legends ZA, I believe. I've also tried not to actually watch any PokeTubers who have done their predictions for the starters, but inevitably there is going to be crossover somewhere with someone. There's only so many starters to pick from. So first of all, I do want to say that the starters we are going to pick for Legends ZA have to be reflective of the existing type triangle. While Legends Arceus did things differently, it still ultimately had a fire, water, and grass starter. If this is a pattern and not an exclusive, then it may be the case that ZA does not repeat the Kalos starters, and maybe also rule out the Kanto starters, as they were the secondary starters of X and Y, much like how Legends Arceus ruled out the starters of Sinnoh. But that also could be because BDSP came right before Legends Arceus, meaning that they would be repeating starters back to back. However, I do think it's most likely that this mix and matching of existing starter Pokemon will become a tradition for Legends games, and that's what I'm going to be basing my picks on. I think they're also unlikely to use the same starters as Legends Arceus, but I don't think Legends Arceus is setting the precedent that every Legends game has to have a Johto, Unova, and a Alola trio. Firstly, because it happening once does not indicate a pattern, but also because that means they'd only be able to make like 2 more Legends games. So this does mean naturally that we can leave out Rowlet, Cyndaquil, and Oshawott, though something of note is that Decidueye, Typhlosion, and Samurott all already kind of had a connection to Japan, or at least the feudal era, before being given Hisuian forms, in addition to being very popular Pokemon, which likely informed their choice too. Decidueye is an archer, a very common warrior in feudal Japan. Samurott is a literal samurai, self-explanatory, and Typhlosion, well, Johto is one of the most traditionally Japanese regions, with things like the Kimono Girls, but also it could be the case that Typhlosion's Japanese name, Bakafun, while seemingly coming from Bakafu, an explosive blast, and Typhoon, could also be a reference to the Bakafun, or tent government, the shogunate or hierarchy of shogun in feudal Japan. I also do want to acknowledge that some fans are latching onto the idea that based on the Indigo Disc starter Pokemon trailer, it looks like each of the Legends Arceus Pokemon has been matched up with a Pokemon that could be a candidate for a Legends ZA starter, a kind of hint in plain sight. The Pokemon Company absolutely loves to do these kind of hints, but also sometimes these hints turn out to be nothing. And yes, the rooster is a prominent French animal, however, Blaziken already got a Mega, which means it feels unlikely that Torchic would be picked as the starter Pokemon for Legends ZA. Perhaps this means that instead they'll get variant Evos like Arceus, meaning that Blaziken could have Mega Blaziken and Colossean, Lumiosian Blaziken, but the Mega symbol seems so key to that trailer, and that to me is a sign that they're going to be focusing on it quite heavily in Legends ZA, perhaps over Colossian or Lumiosian forms. Because the game is focused so specifically in Lumio City and not a Kalos of the past, it's still Kalos, it's still Lumio City, so perhaps the distinction between Hisui of the past and Sinnoh being more modern won't be as pronounced in a more recently historical Kalos or Lumio City, so maybe the Lumiosian forms just won't really be a thing. And again, if you want to take that trailer as a hint to the starters, that's fine. However, we're all pretty certain that the past Paradox Legendary Beasts and the future Paradox Swords of Justice meant we were getting a Legends Johto and a remake of Unova, but that didn't happen either. So I wouldn't put 100% stock in this being a full-on teaser, you know? I also think it's likely similar to X and Y, the games that this Legends game is based on, we might get 2 sets of starters. The initial mixed bag of other region starters like Legends Arceus, but also we might get to choose from one of the Kalos starters later in the game, who may also get Mega Evolutions. It's still insane to me that the 3 Kalos starters didn't get Mega Evolutions in their own game, the one that debuted Mega Evolution. So Legends ZA, which seems to be fixing a lot of things things that were left behind in X and Y, like Zygarde, AZ, it would feel appropriate for them to finally Mega Evolve Chestnut, Delphox, and Greninja. As we are hedging our bets on starters that we can give Mega Evolutions, this also rules out the Hoenn starters in my opinion, which again is why I'm skeptical of that post supposedly teasing the starters. Even if Torchic is a contender, why choose one Pokemon with a Mega Evolution and two without in this new Mega Evolution focused Legends game? With all that said, and with going for more popular Pokemon, we have settled on Piplup. It's Sinnoh rep. A nice nod to the region of the last Legends game, Hisui, eventually becoming Sinnoh, in which Piplup is a starter. And it's been at least 2 games since we had BDSP, so that's enough time for us to use a Sinnoh starter again. And its final stage is Empoleon, of course, getting its name from the Emperor Penguin and Napoleon. That's a very specifically French connection, and one I doubt Game Freak is going to pass up in their revisit to Kalos. And that means our grass Pokemon is similarly easy, Unova rep in Snivy. I did consider Chikorita as my Johto bias is strong, but its final stage Serperior is again pretty clearly referencing French imagery. The Rose of Versailles and King Louis XIV, aka the Sun King. Also, Unova is technically next in line for remakes, even though I think that a Crystal remake is coming at some point. And that finally left us with 2 regional choices for the Fire starter. As a reminder, Gen 1 and Gen 6 are out because they were already Kalos starters. Gen 2 is out because Cyndaquil was a starter in Legends Arceus. Hoenn is out because Torchic already has a Mega Evolution. That leaves 2 more gens for our starters, as we're using a Sinnoh Pokemon in Piplup and a Unova Pokemon in Snivy. Gen 7 or Gen 8, Litten or Scorbunny. And I'm going to side with Scorbunny. It's a recent but not too recent starter, similar to how Rowlet was in Arceus, and Cinderace being a rabbit football soccer player has a great connection to France, given Europe in general being very passionate about football, but also France specifically to me has a very intrinsic connection to football, with France 98 being an iconic World Cup of my childhood. And admittedly the mascot for that was a rooster, but damn it Torchic, why did you have to have a Mega Evolution already? Anyway, those are my picks. Argue with them in the comments if you want, it's just a hypothetical. But I wanted to go one step further and roped in one of my favourite artists, Dry Designs, to Mega Evolve these starters' final forms, to give us an idea of what sort of thing we could expect from Legends ZA and how it will shake up these existing Pokemon. And if you disagree that these starters will get Mega Evolutions and instead prefer the variant evolution idea, like the Hisuian forms, we made sure these designs would also work as thematic Colossean or Lumiosian evolutions, so whichever side Game Freak lands on, these should still work. And we begin with Empoleon, which Dry has transformed into Mega Empoleon. Dry started with Empoleon because he always liked the idea of it becoming an ice type instead of its standard water steel. And my pitch to Dry was adding the ice type, making Mega Empoleon an ice steel. The ice type, of course, making perfect sense for a penguin, but it also has a connection to Napoleon too, as there are well-known depictions of Napoleon wrapped up in warm winter wear. Looking so cozy. Considering that Napoleon was known for being a conqueror and had pretty offensive military tactics, Dry thought that Mega Empoleon should embrace this as well by having higher attack and speed. These stats would also compensate its rougher type combo. Dry imagined Mega Empoleon lying on its ice hands and using them as a bobsled, slamming its ice crown against the enemy, perhaps having a hail-related ability like Slush Rush, though perhaps Game Freak would give it a brand new signature ability to make it stand out from Alolan Sandslash. Moving over, Serperior becomes Mega Serperior. Since Louis XIV is known as the Sun King because he lasted forever in the throne, Dry thought about making Mega Serperior have higher special defense and HP, and also have a sun-related ability, both as a direct reference and as a counterpart to Empoleon's snow ability. Perhaps Photosynthesis, the signature ability of ancient Paradox Pokemon that boosts the Pokemon's most proficient stats in harsh sunlight, or if the Pokemon is holding booster energy, but again it could also get a unique new ability. The color being this grandiose could also work as a solar panel or even reflecting sunlight and confusing its opponent, so a brand new ability could be something like Dry suggested, Radiant, that raises evasiveness or special defense in the sun. Dry also used the Quetzalcoatl as inspiration because it is also a sun god, most likely making Mega Serperior a grass dragon type, but Dry and I agree that grass fire or even grass poison would work with some mild adjustments to the color palette. I like how Dry has really upped the fleur-de-lis, making them even more apparent in Mega Serperior's design, but again this could totally work as a Lumiosian or Colossian Serperior. And finally that brings us to Cinderace, who Mega evolves to Mega Cinderace. I pitched Dry to focus on the French and soccer aspect, really playing them up, and Dry felt like Fire Fairy would make a lot of sense since Kalos introduced the fairy typing, making it very likely they would reference it somehow in ZA's starters. Dry also took inspiration from Lepus cornutus, which is a horned rabbit from medieval French folklore, similar to a jackalope, which also supports the fairy typing and lends some more credibility to us using Scorbunny and Cinderace here instead of Torchic. The uniform is also inspired by the French national team, though we will say it being a Fire Fairy type may make the final starter's type triangle unbalanced. But just like with Serperior, Dry suggested some simple color changes could fix that, make it a Fire Psychic or Fire fire electric, would also work quite well for Cinderace. With the fairy typing, we imagine the fireball being more like magical fire, hitting trick shots, or even putting up misty terrain. Maybe give it the ability Pixelate that turns normal type moves into fairy type moves could be handy if a non-mega evolved Cinderace has any normal type moves. Its mega evolution could then switch things up, like a football player trying out a new formation mid-match, but in this instance turning a normal type tackle, I want to give it tackle because it's a soccer player, but it wouldn't have tackle at that level, into a fairy type move. But again, if we adjust its typing, its moves and ability would adjust in turn. So that is it. So I think the starters for Pokemon Legends ZA will be, and our mega evolutions of them thanks to dry designs: Mega Empoleon, Mega Serperior, and Mega Cinderace, or Lumiosian Empoleon, Lumiosian Serperior, and Lumiosian Cinderace, whichever you prefer. This hay fever or cold is still kicking my ass. So thank you all so much for watching, and I really hope you do enjoy this Pokemon video. I'd love to be able to do more monster and even non-monster franchises on these whatever Wednesdays. If you want to support more custom art videos like this, Digimon ones, etc., please go do that over on patreon.com/Karn EX, and make sure you go follow Dry as well. Thank you to my sovereign on Patreon, ZDK14. YouTube's API has changed, so I can't do the cool credits thing I was doing. I'm trying to find another service that does that, or a way to pull all of my channel memberships and patrons in a really easy way rather than the awful way that YouTube's API makes you do right now. So currently the credit scroll is gone, but we'll get it fixed in the future. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do subscribe, like, leave a comment saying I love Karn Pokemon videos. And I'll see you next time when we go digital. Bye bye.